we're going to talk about essential fatty acids today. So actually I decided to take the message and just spend as much time as I want on lipids. So people have had me for other classes. I said I could do a whole term on fats and stuff, and also reading comments from different people from last week and questions and stuff. That there's a couple of key points. So as we're going through this, I'll also review some of the terminology and also a reminder that you guys have that we still had school last week, even though we weren't in person. So there was only one video that you had to watch and submit notes, which most of you did, but make sure you get the notes in. And then you guys had a 7-day challenge that's due today. You got that. You saw that. So you'll be doing a double thing, I guess, and a recipe and stuff. And then there's a new one for this week. So if you're kind of behind, make sure you touch base with me after class and talk and stuff. And for the half of you that are on track and doing stuff, keep doing it. If you didn't notice that, oh yeah, wow, we still have stuff going on, you can at least do 2 of the 3 things and get those in today, which would be the recipe. And it has a lot to do with this. So kind of our theme is continuing. So I want to review some of the terms. And the FA is always going to stand for fatty acid. And so the SFA means that they're saturated. And this tends to be animal. So our body, when we store fat, we store it as saturated fat. In our diet, we can take in the unsaturated fats. And so essential fatty acid is something our body cannot make. And so they're essential. They at one time said there were like 50 or 52 essentials. I can't imagine that there's really only that many, but our diet has become the diet of kings and queens. And so we've become depleted in a lot of things that you can normally get in your diet. But the saturated just means that they form a zigzag kind of shape. And this is just the fatty acid part. And you'll see that in some of the pictures. But what happens is these guys will stack, which means that they're going to be found. They're going to clot up. They're going to form emboli, which is going to clot our blood. Yeah, and all excess calories. So I have been doing a lot of thinking. It's not going to show up for a couple of slideshows because a student in my other class sent me a label and asked me to look at it. He was asking me, he was doing the protein powders. Everybody's big into protein powders. I think you actually analyzed protein powder in his household. And I actually went because I bought a friend of mine a protein powder because I don't believe in them unless you're in a place where you're extremely ill, which he is, and he needed to gain weight and muscle and stuff. And so I went and retrieved it back and I was like, oh, I was really good at reading my label because it really is just whole, really high protein grains like amaranth, quinoa, and stuff like that. It was just 4 things in there. But anyway, this guy sent me it and it had like 20 ingredients. And everything was highly isolated and had fake sugars and things like that. And I've had so many people tell me stories after I do some of these talks where somebody in their family or friend at a young age, like 30 or before, had a stroke or a massive heart attack and died, or had a stroke and is now, recovery from a stroke is not fun. And they're eating really clean, except then they're doing these things and you don't need that much protein. You make muscle by using them and stuff. And these things are highly, highly processed. And the stuff in them was alarming to me. Anyway, your body, you get any extra calories, whether it's protein, carbs, fats. If you get too many calories fast, your body, your liver, you gotta be nice to your liver. Your liver stores it as saturated fat and then just distributes it around. And then we have the unsaturated fats. And what happens with the unsaturated fats is you're going to get a kink. you get a double bond. This is a carbon-carbon double bond, and that's kink. And that's going to make it so it's fluid. And this, we can sometimes put them in, but they mostly are going to come from our diet, from plant sources of them. And then essential fatty acids have a whole bunch of kinks in them. Now, the problem with the kink is something that I get to, because it's going to be something I have to be very careful with essential fatty acids, is that these guys are susceptible to oxidative damage. So they oxidize really, really easily. And yeah, which ends up being a huge issue. So there's the essential fatty acids. I have to figure out how to go forward on this. There we go. Are your omega-3s and omega-6s. So I'm pretty sure you've all heard of omega-3s and omega-6s, right? Because they're kind of buzzwords now. And that just means from the end that this would be a 6. So if we started counting here, this was, I didn't do it right, sorry. Yeah, I did do it right. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the first double bond in omega-6 is 6 from the end. This is called the omega end. And I think I went through that some last week. Yeah. And omega-3 is the first double bond is 3 from the end. And if you're really interested and want to learn more about this, the Chem 106 class I teach, which is biochem, we do a lot more of the structure. And in the past, nursing students did take Chem 106. And so then they could understand the structure, and then everything else kind of made sense with that. But anyway, for our class, it's just that they're omega-3s and omega-6s, and you'll see some zigzags. There we go. And what these are and why they're essential is they themselves make something else that our body needs. And those are called the ecosonoids. So if you took my Chem 106, you may vaguely remember that word. That's not a buzzword out there. Omega-3 and omega-6s are, but it's the same with anything. It's going to be used to make something in our body. And here's some more big words: prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and thromboxans, which are the ecosonoids. Now, those of you who've taken some medical terminology and stuff, actually you can see what's going on if you start looking at the word. So thromb means what? A thrombus is a blood clot. So these guys are big into blood clotting. I'm saying we're now talking about double bonds, and this was what was stacking, making the clot. These guys could be part of it too. Leuko, I may know. Never see that prefix? That's blood. It's your white blood cells specifically. And your white blood cells are your defense. When you get injured, when something happens, if you have a cold, they're the ones that come. And prostaglandin was, because I spelled it wrong, first one was isolated from the prostate, but they're all over the bodies in everybody. And their big deal, what they do is these guys are our inflammatory response. So the ecosonoids, all of them, you get injured, you get sick, these guys are the ones that are doing the thing. This is a key word that I used here, which is mediate. Took me a long time and many years to be happy with the word there. So they are responsible for the inflammatory response, but they keep it in balance. And so the full moon that we just went through, the new moon, or sorry, the pink moon, it's actually in the sign of Libra. It's somehow how the sky is. And so this is a time all about finding our balance. And so these guys make sure the inflammatory response is what we need it to be. And as you know, looking at yourself or our society, this is nowhere near in balance. Like what everybody's suffering from is inflammation, right? Everybody has pain. Little kids are always in pain and stuff. And again, I don't remember having pain. And so we're going to see a couple of these in there. And so regulating inflammation, also our response with our immune system. So allergy season, when you see people with allergies and stuff. Another big thing they do is they regulate your smooth muscle. So you have 3 types of muscle in your body, right? So your cardiac, which is your heart. You have your big skeletal muscles, which when people think of muscles, they think of their skeletal muscles, but you also have smooth muscles. So for women, your uterus is a smooth muscle. So cramping, which the contractions of the uterus, is absolutely related. And these guys are related to our diet, right? So this is all coming from the omega-3s and omega-6s, which are essential, which means you have to get them in your diet. So if your diet's out of balance, all these things are not going to work. Your intestines are smooth muscles, so contractions of those are related. Your blood vessels are smooth muscles. So think about all this stuff with blood pressure and stuff, and oh, we have a medication for that. So we just put Band-Aids over it instead of saying, how can we help you get back to the balanced place? Because our bodies are perfect. Our bodies are amazing. And then your bronchi are, so for breathing. So think about asthma. So pretty much I've covered every possible thing that can happen in us, but asthma is absolutely related, as well as our allergies and stuff. So there we go, blood vessels, uterus, bronchioles, and your intestines. Now something else, I don't know with me, oh, platelets. So your blood has got three main components, right? So the red blood cells, which most of us think of, which carry oxygen around and get rid of CO2. And so that's another big key, which hopefully we'll get to. We have to learn how to slow down, which means slowing down our breathing. But you have the white blood cells, which we'll talk about because they're going to be the ones that regulate inflammation. Because when you get injured, you need an inflammatory response. But the platelets are the ones that clot your blood. So if you get injured, you want to have a way, your body has to have a way to stop the bleeding, right? And so that's where these guys are going to come in. But again, the big picture is it's coming down. Very essential. It has to come from your diet in a balanced way. And then all this is going to be balanced. Your inflammatory response, your smooth muscle contractions, and just the right amount of blood clotting where we want it, not in arteries to our heart and to our brain at times when we don't. And also, so gastric means stomach. So the lining of your stomach gets this beautiful mucus coating. And that is because, does anybody know why we have to have a mucus coating for our stomach?
The acids in our stomach?
Yeah, so your stomach releases hydrochloric acid. It's one of the most acidic places there is. And there's a reason for that, because that's where digestion of proteins happens. And so we're always changing the pH of our stomach. There's also absorption of calcium happens there. If the pH isn't low enough, you don't absorb calcium. Your B12 also gets absorbed from the low pH. And so your body has this way to protect it. And that actually is related to our essential fatty acids. And the big buzzword now is autoimmune, that there are so many autoimmune, which is your immune system's out of balance and it starts responding incorrectly. A lot of people's responses to COVID is actually more an autoimmune. They're trying to reclassify it, but the mainstream doesn't know what to do. So what they usually do for autoimmune is they give you cortisone shots to try to numb everything. I actually have a degree in acupuncture also, and acupuncture actually works by stimulating. Acupuncture works on all this stuff beautifully. And it's probably because somehow it's tapping in to try to bring you back to the balance. All right, so this is what they look like. The prostaglandins, they're going to have like letters. PG stands for prostaglandin, not pregnancy in this talk. And then there's always a letter, and there's like hundreds or thousands of these. See, you lost your seat. Yeah, and they are all about inflammation, as I said. They're going to make, this is the COOH, that's the fatty acid end that we talked about last week. And they curve, what happens is there's double bonds, those extra lines, as they curve around, and then an enzyme in our body makes this line here. So it makes it into that pentagon, and it makes it this perfect little shape. So it can do its things and puts on a whole bunch of extra oxygens so that can get around in our body. These guys are not classified as hormones because they don't travel all over the body. They act locally. but they'll be released by one cell and work around that area. So if you hurt your knee, they're released there. And so when they teach cellular communication, it's getting really tricky because we always say, okay, you have hormones, you have neurotransmitters, but there's actually all these other ones. And so now, like the big buzzwords, when people want to sound really intelligent, they're like, oh, cytokines, you get a cytokine storm and this and that, which is not really a good thing to have a storm happening. But it all comes back to these guys, and they are made from your omega-3s and omega-6s. And it turns out there has to be a balance, and we are so far out of balance. And well, it's not here. All right. So again, this is Ecosonoid is the general category, 4 different ones. So these are glucotrienes, the thromboxanes, and so they have different categories, but their big deal is they deal with inflammation. Your essential fatty acids, you'll see pictures like that. So we'll see fish, nuts. They're good stuff. All right. So again, PG is prostaglandin. Somebody somewhere, when they isolated them, again, they gave them a letter and a number. And so this is kind of an overview, like trying to simplify something, because it really is simplistic. The pictures up there again are because I am a chemist and I think they're really cool. So that's the fatty acid. It's an omega-6, because if you come down, not at the double bonded OH thing, but the other end, you count the balls at number 6 is where you see the first double bond. And we see a whole bunch of double bonds. And so it makes it, isn't that beautiful how they do that? Sorry, Amber has challenged, like me, of making tumor drawing the curves too. So anyway, that's the fatty acid, which you have to be really careful because these are susceptible to the free radical because of all those double bonds. And what happens is our body has this enzyme that crunches it and makes it into this. Now we're going to have 1s, 2s, and 3s, and it's a balance point. We need all 3 of them. But the picture on there is, this one is not actually essential. Our body can make this one, but that's the name of the acid. This is just a reminder. Also, when you see this, this is just how many carbons, if we counted all the blue balls. The 4 is how many double bonds. So it's just a way that chemists will often talk. And so don't let that scare you. This is the actual symbol for omega. And so it's an omega-6. And it makes the second group of prostaglandins. And the big source is animal food, which is fine, but we don't actually need it because we can make this from another one of them. I just have this note in here because the fatty acid from peanuts has almost the same name. And there was like 20 years ago, peanuts have gotten a really bad name for a reason. Peanuts are actually a wonderful source of protein. Yeah, they're a fun topic. So I guess I should stop for a moment. I think we're all here now. You guys, your class presentations are next week. So I need topics this week. And last Monday, I did not anticipate what was going to happen on Wednesday. And so I said, hey, let's do food additives and stuff. But when we lost class on Wednesday, and it was useless for me to try and do Zoom again when half of the people weren't going to come, I didn't want to have people getting more and more behind. Your class presentation and a paper, you need to write on some kind of food. So maybe today or Wednesday I'll inspire you, or maybe you've already been inspired, so you can pick a fruit or something. One of the things you're going to do this week is you're going to look into something. And so if you have a topic idea today, you can let me know, or I'd love them Wednesday, or I'm going to start becoming persistent. But you're going to write a paper about it, and you're going to do a class presentation. And we'll talk more on Wednesday. There is in the syllabus folder on Blackboard. If you click on there, it gives some information. I don't give lots of detail, but you're going to talk like somebody did pomegranates. You can absolutely write so much on pomegranates. So you can pick your favorite fruit. you pick a type of nuts. We're going to get into nuts in a little bit because they have our essential fatty acids. Anyway, again, this one's not essential because we actually, most of us have the enzyme to make it. There's some people who don't have the enzyme. It's like the northern, like Gaelic, if you're Gaelic descent and stuff. But these guys are our inflammatory response. So notice that word of mediate is gone. So the mediation happens when all three of them are in balance. And so there's going to be a 1 and a 3 on each side of this that are going to keep it in balance, except we're way out of balance. And some of that has to do with the amount of animal protein and processed animal protein that we eat. And so people get way over the inflammatory response. We need the inflammatory response. You get injured, you absolutely want something to happen, right? And so AA is just my abbreviation for it. It's actually in the membranes of some of your white blood cells. And so when the white blood cells are called in, you get injured and your body responds, your immune system responds. And what you learn usually in your biology anatomy classes is these cells come in, you memorize each type of cell, and you're sitting there going, oh gosh, I don't remember all the types, and that doesn't matter. You learn that they go there, and these first ones are actually little kamikazes, which means they explode at the site. And what you're taught is they release histamine, which is correct. And histamine is this chemical that says, hello, party here, and it calls everybody else to the party. Well, they only got it partly right, because when the cell explodes, you have a cell membrane that was covering the cell, and that cell membrane is a lot bigger than the inside, right? Because it's the whole surface, and that cell membrane is made up of fatty acids. And one of those fatty acids that is high in mast cells is this guy, and it gets changed. Yeah, all right, so blah, blah, blah. And it gets changed. It ends up being the one, it's 1,000 times stronger. It's much more abundant than histamine. It's actually the one that's probably calling everybody to the party. So histamine's on the inside, and we can find tons of cartoons about that. But the whole outside of the cell is releasing arachidonic acid, which gets changed into something, prostaglandin or leukotriene. So you injure your knee and you say, ouch, that's a nerve response, but then inflammation happens, right? We've all been where, or your ankle, you twist your ankle and then you just see all this inflammation. So like a friend of mine right now, he has this issue with swelling of his feet. And yeah, you have to go back to get your diet in balance. So this is really important because if there's a cut, we want the platelets to come in and clot it. We want the smooth muscle in the area, which is your vessels, to constrict to stop the bleeding, right? So we need constriction to happen. The problem is most people's injuries are not like this anymore. Most people are just getting out of bed. And because their diet is off, they're eating so much animal food that they're getting too much of this going on. So they're getting clotting happening when they don't need it, or they're getting their smooth muscles to contract. You also get an increase in temperature. So whenever you injure yourself, you notice it feels warm in the area. And yeah, the pain response is because you're supposed to, if you ever watch, if you have an animal and they get hurt, what do? You can't find them for a day, right? Because they go back in the deepest part of your closet and they just sleep and they lick their wound and they just rest. And what do? We're like, take a couple of pills and let's go run another 3-5 miles. You know, pick a topic. This is something, because I'm thinking of Amber. She did ibuprofen last term. And I was like, okay, I let you guys pick your topics and you can change. If you over the weekend, they're like, oh, wow, I found this really cool stuff about carrots. I want to do carrots now. Anyway, it was because she ran cross country and you run. And so I didn't know this, but your coach just keeps telling you, just keep taking ibuprofen so you can keep running. And I was rather horrified, but it was really fun because in her talk, it's something I encourage. Include a picture of why you picked it. So if you can include like a family picture or you like running and stuff and talking, I don't know, but we just tell people keep going instead of give your body a chance to rest and eating healthy. So this guy's released, we get more clotting, more vasoconstriction, and these guys are released, which call more people. These are the ones that are made that call everybody to the party. So you get more inflammation, more constriction, etc. So they actually liken our overproduction of arachidonic acid because of our diet. Everything from breast lumps, arthritis, asthma, cardiovascular disease, all the skin issues that you see. You change your diet, your skin clears up. And some of you may have noticed this. My other class, because they're online and we see each other on Zoom once a week, they have to do the flip grid thing, which I understand everybody hates it. They are doing amazing. I like almost want to do it with this class. And so they're really sincere because they have to talk about their lab. And some of them have talked about they have to make a 30-day change also. And a lot of people were commenting on what's been happening so far, and they're like really excited because they're eating more fruit. And they're like, my skin, like I've always had all these skin issues, and it's just like clearing up and stuff. And because if you start eating more fruit, you're not going to eat as much of something else. Yeah, I have it here, so I don't have to keep carrying it around. This is what I forgot 2 weeks ago. This is the amount of sugar we used to eat, which is 2 cubes of sugar a day. And this is how much the average American eats now of sugar. I can't believe it's only this. I think it's actually higher. But I wasn't going to go count my cubes again. I had to buy 2 boxes of sugar to do this. I know. And then this. And this is the one I thought I wrote it on here and I never remember, and I have to go find my notes. It's kind of weird going to my office because nobody's up there. But anyway, this was bacon fat. When my stepson moved here from Nepal, he'd never had bacon, and he was just like, this is 20 years ago. Anyway, you can't pour it down your drain because it's going to clog up the drain, but people put it in their body. And so it's doing the same thing. Anyway, so I collected it and then I went and weighed it and it came out exactly to the right mass. And I'm pretty sure it's either a week or a day. This is the consumption of fat by the average American. I know it's not a month, it's less than that. And I don't want to be so bold to say every day, but even if it's every week, this is like really disturbing. That this is what you're putting in. And so, yeah, we can see this is going to cause the clotting from the stacking up of the saturated fats and cholesterol, but you're also getting a ton of this fatty acid because animals are not only saturated, we have certain unsaturated, and you're getting tons of this, and it just keeps making these guys that overdo. There's no balance here. So, yeah. And again, we have a pill for that. Or we can realize that our diet can make the change. And that's why if you're eating in either of these categories, like tons of, and this is also how you prepare your food, that you get excess of arachidonic acid. And this is a plagiarized thing, but it's pretty cool to me that this stuff is actually out there now that other people talk about it. You get actually increase in rates of cancer and things like that because the cancer cell membranes now are going to get messed up because they're going to get more of the arachidonic acid. So this, you've all heard the term COX inhibitors. So I don't have a TV, so I don't hear this term anymore. I don't know why anybody has a TV, but whenever they talk about medications at the end, they're like, don't take this if you're on a COX inhibitor. Or a MAL inhibitor or one of those. So COX means cyclooxygenase. It is the enzyme that makes your prostaglandins. And it's specifically COX-2 because it's the one that makes this one that causes inflammation. And so that is a picture of aspirin. This is how aspirin works. And so they isolate, it used to be they made tea from the willow bark, right? And natural ways. So there's natural ways to do it, which is very different. So in Chinese medicine with the herb, but we said, no, let's figure out what it is in the willow bark. And so they isolated aspirin like 150 years ago. And what does aspirin do? It reduces fever. So that was one of the things, the temperature response that happens with inflammation. It reduces pain because it's blocking this guy, and it reduces inflammation. Ibuprofen only does the pain and inflammation. And Tylenol does not work this way. Tylenol ends up being the one that everybody ends up being put on. Tylenol is really bad for your liver. They actually started recommending people should not be taking Tylenol about 5 years ago, but they cover up all that stuff after a while. So even people just taking one a day, they're finding long-term issues with the liver. And yeah, what were you going to say? Or no? Okay. So it is what it makes that ring happen, the pentagon. It's just the enzyme that does that. But it's not actually just a COX-2. It's always a COX-2 and a COX-1. So aspirin blocks both the formation of prostaglandin 2 and prostaglandin 1 when we see it, which comes from the omega-3s, omega-6s, which are all the seed oils that are highly oxidized and stuff. So animal and seed oil end up being our two big culprits causing this inflammatory issues that we're having all over the world. They actually tried to make ones that only block 2, and the people died within like a couple months, and those get taken off. Like in the trial, in the 6 months, it's like, oops, we lost a lot of people, and so they stopped doing that because you can't just block one part of a balance, and so that's part of the issue. So aspirin, you probably all know, has some serious side effects. So yeah, it also blocks COX-1. I do have it there. So it blocks both of them. And because COX-1 helps to keep some of this in balance. So we have to take, if you only block one, you end up having serious side effects. But my mom was put on, because we've made, these are called the non-steroidal NSAIDs, NSAIDs. So non-steroidal, so it's not cortisol, anti-inflammatory drugs. And we have so many of them now. It's really hard to believe. And so my mom was put on one. They said it was mild. Nothing's going to be as mild as aspirin if it has to have a prescription. And she thankfully did not take it every day. She had taken like 2 or 4 over a month, and she ended up in the hospital for a week because her stomach lining, because that's one of the things these guys do, remember, is they give you that perfect lining to protect you from the acid in your stomach. And so she started having bleeding happening, and she didn't know it. And she woke up one day and kind of collapsed. And then this past year, she was put on a steroid because of an eye problem. And within 4 days, she was diabetic. She had everything wrong, because they are every possible side effect you can have from a steroid she had, including ending up in the hospital with bleeding gut. The thing was, so the GI went in, and they put her on the stuff to change the pH to stop her body from making the HCl. I'm like, you have to stop that. That's gonna, in the long run, because you need the HCl. Your body makes it for a reason. Yeah. All right. Okay. Oh, so Motrin, whatever your choice of drug is. And that's just another one that talks about NSAIDs, so non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, all the side effects that you can get from it. Big ones here, ulcers and stuff, is from taking the Motrin, the ibuprofen. And so that's why I'm horrified to hear that these coaches are telling all these young athletes, we've become consumed, that's important, that we run the race, and yet we're destroying inside of our body. Changes our blood pressure, has effects on our kidneys, and as I mentioned over here, strokes and MI. So for the longest time, they would recommend if you had a stroke, you took a baby aspirin or even half a baby aspirin, so just a small amount to help to block the blood clotting. I'm pretty sure they don't even recommend that anymore, because there were so many other side effects that were happening. And because the people didn't change their lifestyle, it really isn't going to do anything. It's just like putting a Band-Aid on. And so, yeah. So, rather than taking aspirin, why not have some ginger? So you did, oh, you did turmeric. That's the other one. So ginger is actually, it does double duty. It is a COX inhibitor and also inhibits, and whenever it's coming from a natural food source, it does it in a mediated way, which is very different from when we isolate as a drug. So when they isolate the molecule in the ginger and people start taking just that molecule, it's not going to work the same way. And it all comes down, and you're finally, it's really hard to find this stuff, but it's coming out. It all has to do with vibes. So your body is vibrational. That's how our atoms work, right? That build up everything. It's all vibrations. And whole food has vibrations. And so this actually works better than aspirin. In Asian cultures, you cannot cook Asian food without ginger. And so ginger, you could, as a food topic, if you're like, yeah, we eat tons of ginger in our house, I want to learn more about it, that's a possibility. Although I was saving spices for our last one. So I'd prefer if you pick something else for this one, but you can tell me you want ginger as yours. Anyway, so ginger is amazing. In Chinese medicine, it is actually the second herb that you learn about. I don't think I'm right there. I think it's actually number 3. So you learn about ma huang, which is in all the energy drinks, which I can't believe that. And I think number 2 is cinnamon bark. And I think this one's number 3, but it's also really important for stomach whenever you have stomach issues. So back in the day, I'm old enough that we could get real ginger ale. You can get real ginger ale. Most of the ginger ale, though, is just flavored high fructose corn syrup. But if it has real ginger in it, you would have it to help settle your stomach, because ginger works really amazing, and it probably has to do with this, and that it helps keep your mucus. It's anti-inflammatory, right? And that's turmeric, which again, I can't make anything without ginger and turmeric in it. So turmeric actually is even more fascinating. We're going to talk about the trees in a moment, because they're going to be the good guys. But it actually, anything, the yellow curries, they're called yellow curries because they have turmeric. So even if I make a green curry, I add turmeric. No matter what kind of anything I make, I just buy the cute bags of turmeric. I have a really hard time finding yellow curry though, because the stuff they sell in the store is not the real yellow curries. You have to go like to the Indian store. Green tea also is really good at, and again, it's natural, so it keeps it all in balance. It balances the 3, the carotenoids, so carrots, anything that's orange or yellow. And I think that's parsley. Oh, oregano. That looks like parsley. I think it was just a cute picture. I made bunny bread last night. It's funny. It was a little dense because it's gluten-free, and gluten-free breads are always dense. Fish oils, blah, blah, blah. So there are ways. You have to be careful with fish oils, and we'll get to that. And acupuncture, actually. And bee venom. So I was doing the whole talk on bee venom, which is apitherapy. And this is somebody's skin. This is a picture of a bee on human skin. This is a real therapy for inflammation. And you go in and they put bees on you and they sting you in the area you're having inflammation. And it actually works. This is, so this is actually was used by the Egyptians, the Chinese, and the Greeks. It's called BVT. So when you keep seeing BVT, it's bee venom therapy. And some Hungarian guy brought it here about 90 years ago. And it works, they use it also for cancer. It apparently can destroy cancer cells. It's used for Lyme's disease, which nothing else seems to help. Gout, any kind of pain, wounds, MS, shingles, burns, tendinitis, infections. So there's over 40 ingredients in bee venom. That's what they've isolated probably so far. And these are just a list of some of them. So the one is 100 times, this is for, again, my chemistry class, so they're focusing on the molecules, but it's 100 times stronger than cortisone, which is the steroid that they give an injection that has so many side effects that if you go in for pain, that's all they're going to do for you. A doctor is they give you cortisone shots. I'm like, why? I don't know where you can get this done, but apparently you just walk in your backyard barefoot and step on the clovers. bees are back. That would injure the bees. There's another one. So they're anti-inflammatory. And that's why when you guys have all been bit by a bee, these are, I don't know what type of bee they are that they do this with, but you get inflammation and stuff in the area. So 2 years ago when COVID, it was June, right when COVID started, I was at my mom, and I have this place in her garden I would go and do my meditation. And I could see in this one spot that there must have been a hive for yellow jackets or something underground. I could see them coming up. And so I would stay away from them. Well, my son was doing mulching her whole yard and everything, and he saw them, and he decided to just cover them with mulch, and that would suffocate them. I didn't know this. So then I go out and I'm like, oh, they're gone. And I just step right on it. And of course, like I'm doing my Qigong and I'm like, I'm going to pretend this is not happening, because in meditation, right, you're not supposed to feel anything. After about the sixth one, I'm like, I need to go inside and like do something. But we were laughing because then her neighbors got stung by ones, because everybody was having beehives and yellow jackets. And I was like, well, maybe this is like a natural therapy for COVID and we won't get COVID for so many months, but who knows? But initially get an inflammation response. So it's trying to help, but it does it in a way that apparently helps to decrease their inflammation. So it says the ingredients, this is word synergy, where they work together and they don't add up, they actually make each other increase like exponentially. And so it promotes your body to bring in its natural healing defenses. It increases the blood circulation, and you actually end up with reduced swelling to the area, which is pretty fascinating. Again, I don't know much about it other than I guess there's some show where they do it, because that's where both students who've done that topic picked it. So the omega-6s. So again, that first one was not an essential. It's actually made from your omega-6s. And you can guess where you get your omega-6s from. They're sunflowers. And just a quick fact, which is fun about sunflowers. So sunflowers always turn and are facing the sun all day long. So if you go to Kansas, you can sit and watch the field of sunflowers and they'll turn. And then at night, what do they do? Flowers close up at night. Bees go to sleep. I've watched bees fall asleep. If they're not back at their hive, they just sleep where they're at until the sun comes up. They actually all turn inward towards each other. So the whole field turns, I don't know what their focal point is, but they all face each other. Anyway, it's a good lesson there. So this guy is called linoleic acid, which is the name of the omega-6. And it's found in all your seed oils. And it is it's changed into what's called gamma linoleic acid, and then into the group 1 of the prostaglandins. And you can ignore that. I got rid of all that words. Anyway, so sunflower, safflower, sesame, soy, corn, and cottonseed. And so if you did the food labels this past week, you're supposed to look at something. And I actually encourage, I think you did the one, your boyfriend did Jif, you also did peanut butter, is pick something and then go to the store and pick something. Like if you have a healthy, like you're doing real peanut butter, then go and look at Skippy. Skippy's the one. Jif, that works. Skippy has no peanuts. They might now, but they did. Jif and Skippy used to not have any peanuts at all. They were completely, but it is rather disturbing how many ingredients are in Jif. I think Skippy's even worse, but should try to get him to use atoms. But wow. Well, what about getting the freshly ground ones?
He doesn't like it. Like he just is addicted to the sugar.
Well, yeah, because it has sugar in it.
Smoothness and consistency, honestly, because like it is rough going at him. So like drippy and wet, and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? You know, but it just takes.
You need somebody who can shake. Well, you turn it upside down and that. But you have to buy it before you're going to use it and turn it upside down to help it do the mixing thing.
Different textures in the jar, yeah.
I know, it is. It's a texture thing. So we're saying I'm okay being in pain all the time and complaining as long as my tongue has the right texture, the right taste. But anyway, that's what I would encourage you. Or if, like we did with the Kind Bar versus, but you're looking at how many of these are in there, and there's usually multiple oils. And then find something else in the category that you're thinking might be healthy. So like you might look at Fruit Loops and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna go and find one that they're saying, unless you're doing shredded wheat, because shredded wheat I think only has 2 ingredients, which might be cardboard and shredded cardboard. I don't know. Yeah, right. Shredded wheat really is, it only has 2 ingredients and something like that. Anyway, Gamma Little Lake, I sat in like 20 years ago, a naturopath. And so this is before or when we're right on the cusp of everything now. If it's in a box, a bag, if it comes in any way, it has these. It usually has multiple ones. And anyway, but these are ones that are often used for women going through menopause or different types of issues. And they don't seem to have the problem. And it's probably because they're not processed and in everything. So they're not highly oxidized. But this guy has at least 2 double bonds. I think it has 2. And then gamma linolenic, I think has 3. But these guys are the ones that are like this huge issue. There's everything that's processed has them. And we're getting way too much of them. And you don't need a lot. So several people actually wrote, and this is fine. They're like, well, it's not until like the 5th ingredient. When I look at the total fat, there's only 1 gram of it per serving. One is looking at the serving, like chips. It's like, oh, it doesn't really have that much. It's mostly corn, but they're deep frying it in this stuff. And so you don't need a lot of a carcinogen. You need like picogram amount. And so like if you ever hear of lead poisoning, it really is at nano or picogram amounts. Arsenic, right, in the water, they have to stop everything. And it's tiny amounts. And that's what this is. That's how awful this is. CAH is cancer and inflammation. And this is the big issue. So we had a huge amount. Everybody thinks you have to eat animal-based to get enough protein. And then this is an even bigger issue is all the oils, using the oils are highly processed. And again, as I mentioned, these don't seem to have the issue because they're not processed, because you're buying them in really small amounts and paying huge amounts. And so you would see things like this, do the benefits outweigh the risks? And I don't think anybody believes that anymore, because it turns out you get too much of it. And then I went down my own rabbit hole this weekend. Turns out there's longevity is related to these. It was somebody wrote a comment when they turned in their notes, and it made me just Google something, and I hit on these different articles, and then I got distracted. But there is a connection between the amount of omega-6s in your cell membranes and how long you live, meaning an inverse connection. And we now are getting so much linoleic acid in our diet, even just this little bit, that the amount of linoleic acid, omega-6s in our cell membranes is increasing. So every other species on this planet, you can predict how long they'll live based on their size and different things like that, except for humans and these 2 creatures. And they found that there actually might be a connection with linoleic acid. And so these are the naked mole rats. They used to have them at the Portland Zoo. I think the Portland Zoo has gone way downhill. They still do. Okay. Anyway, these guys, you can find all these fun pictures of them. They live 10 times longer, 10 times longer than any other rodent. So it'd be like us living 1,000 years. Like if you go and read the Old Testament, they all lived 1,000 years, and they didn't eat processed food either. Anyway, they actually, what theirs was is they have high levels of vitamin E. Vitamin E is actually what repairs the oxidation of fatty acids. And they also have low linoleic acid. And then when they looked at the queen bee, she lives like super long, like all the drones only live like short times, but she lives, I mean, she has to be there the whole time. And they find her levels of linoleic acid are extremely low. And both these articles were like from just 2-3 years ago, as they're looking at these things. Anyway, that was just me going down a whole row. It's just another reason to get rid of these, because the bee isn't having oxidized ones, but it turns out It can be too much. So this is a picture. I don't know who Dr. Cruz is, but it just shows us better than I could that we have totally messed up how we're eating. The ratio of omega-3s to 6s, I have seen different ratios. The number seems to be different on every website. That doesn't matter. It's like 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, somewhere in there. Like there's no way you can get too much of what we over-process these and put them in everything. And we're hardly getting any omega-3s now. And we've skyrocketed how much that this ratio is just so far out because we're going to see the omega-6s kind of help seem to help. Nobody's really sure what the omega-6s do, except they get converted then into the prostaglandin 1s and 2s, which seem to create the inflammation and too much of a good thing. These guys are going to be all about omega-3s. Pacific salmon, not Atlantic salmon. All right, that was a slide I showed last one, and I wanted to emphasize it again because your challenge this week is the same, is we're trying to get rid of the seed oils. So if you didn't do last week, you have to do double getting rid of, yeah. And again, please turn in at least like try and make a healthy recipe without oils. And I gave in the last talk, you can just use a banana instead of the oil or pumpkin. It's so simple. Or the liquid off of beans and stuff. So at least get that in today and watch 2 of those videos. They're actually quite fascinating. And then write a note to me. Yeah, I was one of those people who didn't do anything last week. Thank you to the administration who, in their wisdom. So you're going to try and figure out 2 places that you have seed oils. And you're going to be adding something healthy, which we get to, because if you take stuff away, you really can cook without oil. And it is the cooking, because you're going to a high temperature that oxidizes it. If it's an oil, if it's a seed oil, sunflower, safflower, soy, canola, all of those, they're oxidized before you get them. They actually add bleach to change them. So somebody in my other class, because they all got to listen to me do this talk 2 years ago, and they're like, so what do you cook with? Can I use butter? And so I kind of paused. So my last name's Sherpa. So when my Sherpa comes here, he cannot cook without butter. It's like there's certain things like in certain cultures, his cooking's really good. I used to say coconut oil. Coconut oil is saturated, so you're not going to cause that. The ideal is that you really can make that step where you're using water or soup broth is what I use. I make my own soup broth, so I know what's in it and stuff. But that's been me on a journey, and we're all at different places on it. So if your step is, okay, I can get rid of the canola oil and the ones that are coming in oil, and I'll use coconut oil until I'm ready to make the next step. But really, it's like somebody saying, okay, I'm not going to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I'm just going to smoke 1. Kid, my neighbor, he used to sleep over at our house. He's a friend of my son's. He showed up at the door. He's now on the streets. He's a meth addict. And he wanted to borrow our phone. And like I hadn't seen him for a while. And I'm like, yeah, of course, because he used to always borrow our phone when he was a kid, right? And I'm like, do you need a drink of water? I could tell something wasn't right. And so I invited him in. I'm talking to him for like 5 or 10 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, you're high. You're like, he's like, oh, I'm not in trouble. And I'm like, oh, I want to try and help you. How can we, I'm trying to talk him because he wasn't way up there on the meth and stuff. And he's like, well, I'm a lot better than I used to be. I used to do it every day. Now I don't do it 2-3 times a week. So anyway, I would put that same idea there with, well, I'll just do it stepwise. It really does work. I've been there. I'd already been doing all my own cooking, and to make that transition, again, this slide just shows, actually a different graph than the other one that I'd shown, but with diabetes, there's also one that shows pretty much with all the different diseases. There's also, I do need to add, The increase in advertisements for all the processed food also follows this beautifully. So you're just being, they pay a lot of money to people to figure out how to make the box just right. There's a lot of money to getting things at your eye level in the store. And so it's learning how to shop the perimeters, what they'll often say. I don't even do that. I just go to the produce and then I'm done. Yeah. Soups. Right now it's cold, even though it's April. And so making soups, and you don't have to fry the onions. You just throw them in a little soup broth to begin with. Or I think that's that thing behind that pressure cooker fad. I forget what that Instapot, right? That you shouldn't have to use any oils in that, and you can cook. I don't have an Instapot. Or it could be you're getting rid of the fake margarines and stuff in your house. So somebody had said that, because I talked about free radicals, and these guys, the omega-6s, because they've been so processed. Oh, I know what I was going to mention was olive oil, because somebody said, well, that's the only thing we have in our house. So olive oil is only has one double bond. I don't think there's any safe oils, period. If it has to be extra virgin olive oil, and olive oil is made different from other oils. It's actually pressed instead of extracted. So you're not getting all the chemicals and stuff. So you can get, you have to pay for good oil though. Most olive oil should solidify when you put it in the fridge. And most of the olive oil we're getting in this country, I don't know where they're getting it from, but yeah. And avocado oil, somebody asked me about that, and I don't see why you need to extract the oil. It's processed, right? So all these things are being processed. But one of the things that's happening with all these oils, and even if it's olive oil and avocado oil, there's double bond in there. So when you're putting it in heat, you're going to create free radicals. And this is from an article that was last year, actually, and it was just a review of all the stuff that's out there. So it's this hypothesis that the omega-6 vegetable oils are the driver behind heart disease. And so it's the oxidized linoleic, this essential fatty acid. It's essential. It means our body needs it, but we need it not to be oxidized. And so if you're getting in processed food, that's why reading the label, and if it's even there as an ingredient. So it takes time to go to the grocery store. You have to start, and you just have to be ready to say, okay, I'm going to change this out. There are ketchups that really are ketchup, or learn how to make your own, or switch to mustard. But anyway, I put this picture here because almost always when you learn about free radicals, and these guys are the big culprit, you learn about, okay, like nuclear energy, the sunlight. You've all heard about sunlight's going to cause you to have cancer and stuff. Smoking is going to, and so it's still not there yet where we're showing it's these oils. So yeah, no, I don't eat French fries, but you're cooking with the safflower oil. So like my mom, I can't get her, I got her rid of all the other oils. She still has the olive oil. We're in a process. You're 80 years old. Joy is the most important thing. So don't be like, you have to do it in a beautiful, loving way. So if you don't have joy in your life, then okay, eat the oxidized fat. But then the other thing that's missing is they always say it damages your DNA. And so everything's all about the DNA, and oh my gosh, I'm going to have DNA damage, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. And the bigger issue is when you get free radicals, they are going to attack the outside of your cells. So the wall of this room is being attacked, and outside of your cell is fatty acids. It's a lipid bilayer because it's a protection. And so these guys are fats because they don't mix with water. We're 80% water. Inside and outside of our cells is water. So every cell has to be encased by something that keeps things in and keeps things out. And that is fatty acids. And it would be like holes are ending up in the walls in this room. you're not gonna really like that you walk into a room and there's holes in there and you can see like bricks are out of place. You'd be like, it's not looking good. Is this room safe? Can we actually go in? There's structural damage. And so something to ponder. We've all been focusing on the DNA. DNA is absolutely important. It's an amazing molecule because of how freaking big it is when you think about it. It's the same in every cell. And anyway, but your cell membranes are amazing. So these guys are some of the big, they're called radical oxygen species. And the biggest source of them is breathing. So that's why learning how to slow down and to stay calm and to stay joyful, because stress is another big cause. So, but this was another one that I was thrilled to finally find like a picture, because I don't seem to be capable of drawing cartoons myself. I've tried, it was not a pretty thing yet. Some of these people, and so when you guys do your presentations, there's going to be somebody, there's probably multiple of you who know how to like make cartoons. Like some people can make these amazing presentations. I had to find pictures that are already there and then add to them. But anyway, you're going to see this term keep showing up. So ROS is called radical oxygen species. So it's a type of free radical, and it is really the first thing they show damage to on this slide. Number 3 is DNA. I was like, whoa. I was like, Bruce Lipton must have made this slide because he's the one who I was listening to who talked about it. But they really go after your cell membranes. So again, the bricks in this wall are starting to be damaged. Absolutely, we don't want our DNA to be damaged. And the mitochondria are the workers in the cell. They're the ones like that are keeping the electricity running in here and all that stuff. And so one of the sources, one of the big issues is getting them from our oxidized fatty acids. And some of the things it leads to is cancer. So we have ribbons for every type. This is again showing you damage to cell membranes. So this is the membrane. I also like this picture. I don't remember if I mentioned it in here, but I only heard this like a couple of years ago, and it totally changed my thinking that cell membranes are fluid. They're flowing because of the double bonds, which is why they're susceptible to damage. But if you look at it, if you've ever seen a microchip in your computer, in your phone, it looks very similar, and they almost have the same name. And so our cell membranes are doing more than just being like that protection around the cell. They're actually the brain in some ways, the memory of the cell. And so something to ponder. Anyway, heart disease. So I'm sure you've all seen these pictures. So we all want our heart to be beautiful and shiny. Our hearts are, and that's one of the things, yeah. And our damaged heart that's just covered with fat, and it is saturated fat and cholesterol, which again, you can get it because when it's oxidized, but it's also when you're eating more calories than you need, or if you're eating calories that are getting consumed fast. So the highly processed, when you're eating things with fiber, like real fiber, the fruit. So hopefully you guys are doing good with your 30 days, whatever it is. Since we kind of last week, we lost these talks to keep us going. I figure I had to do this in here. That's your liver. And so the liver is going to keep coming up. Your liver is what processes everything and sends it out. It is the commander. In Chinese medicine, I remember the first day and I'm like, well, why'd they put so much emphasis? The liver was more important than the heart. So your heart is absolutely, but they like, one was the commander and the other one was the general. I mean, the liver got the higher ranking, whatever the rankings are. And so too much sugar, right? We talked about that in the first week, and same with the oxidized fat, or just too much of anything. Your liver just doesn't know what to do, and it just stores it as fat, and itself gets covered up with fat, and then it can't do what it needs to do. So sending love. So eyes Lots of people with eye issues. We kind of have made it like a norm that when you get to be 60, you're going to have cataract surgery. It used to be not until you were 80. Now I think it's going to be like 40. Somebody was telling me they were pretty young, and I was like, whoa. And this is not saying smoking is going to cause this. This is saying you want to eat, you don't want to look like that. That lady's probably younger than me. This little boy told me he thought I was 82 the other day. And I told him he was right. I just make up ages for him because kids, like, they sometimes think you're like 50 and sometimes they think you're 22. It's just some age older than them, right? They have no concept of it. Anyway, so aging of the skin. And our body absolutely heals. And so everything is reversible. Don't listen to the doctors who are like, this is chronic, you're going to have it forever, there's nothing you can do. And so if you think about it, we do so much for our skin on the outside. A lot of us put stuff on it, but if you're not doing it from the inside also, and then of course, illnesses, being sick, not being well, inflammation, that's a picture of a cancer cell. They have all these pictures, which it's just not normal. And it's not that it's bad, it just is out of balance. And we have to find that balance point. And so oxidation, always shown. And that's our dis-ease. So I mentioned that before, I think, in here. So disease is dis or not at ease, and health. And so eating bacon is considered a class 1 carcinogen. It does cause cancer, there's no doubt. And wrapped around a highly processed hot dog with a cheese whiz in the back is its tail. I have to show you a picture of the bun and bread in the next one. I think I forgot to put it in here. Or eating healthy. Yeah, and so this is that balance point. Sorry, I hit too many buttons. Right, and I don't know. So it's not that you're going to go to your Easter dinner yesterday and be saying, you know, we don't want to eat the ham. It's just bringing a choice, bringing something that you can eat and that you can share. And so I had a student and she just started bringing fruit for everybody at her work. She works as a nurse, she's an LPN, and she's going back to get her RN. That's why she was in my class. And she just started bringing in fruit for everyone. And everyone was really appreciative. So we eat that beautiful salad, but also sleep. Sleep is so important. It's not just about food. And so hopefully we won't have any more snow days or floods. Mount Hood is gorgeous right now, and they're getting more snow. And so I'm just like, eventually all that snow comes down. Being playful. Being playful on your bike. It was like we go through this every spring where we don't see the sun for like 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then the sun finally came out, and Joey was 5, so I had this attachment on the back of my bike. So I'm like, Joey, we're gonna go for a bike ride. It's in between classes, right? Go home, we get on, I get my biking gear on, I have my speedometer, and we're biking down the spring water, and it's packed with people, and we're biking, and everybody's biking, and everybody's so serious. And there was one guy, this Asian guy, and he was just biking. He was the only, and I get to my spot and turn around, I'm biking back, and I pass him again. He, only person the whole day I saw smiling. And I got home and I took that speedometer off my bike, and it's somewhere in the garage under something still. That was 20 years ago. And so when people ask, they're like, I want to go biking with you. I'm like, oh, probably not, because you probably want to like go really fast and stuff. But it's really nice to stop and smell the roses. And I've had the opportunity to work with some monks and stuff, and they are just so joyful and stuff. And so learning to laugh again, right? As children, if you work with children, so children laugh. They are just amazing. And then we lose that capacity. I ponder that. I went to ask a friend of mine, like, when's the last time you really sat and laughed? And I was thinking, I'm really fortunate because I have a really good relationship with my son and also my mom. But my mom's on the East Coast. But we go and spend a month with her 2 different times of the year. It's just the 3. And that's like our vacation. Like, we don't go anywhere. We're like 45 minutes from New York City or Philadelphia or the Jersey Shore. I haven't been to any of those for 10 years, probably 15, because we're just happy to sit and play cards, play Uno, and we'll all be like laughing, like where you can't breathe. You guys have all done that, where you're laughing and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a heart attack. And you think about it, when do you do that? And it's often with family or something. And so those are just, anyway, taking the time to find laughter, to me is as important as also eating healthy. So, and doing your exercise, being playful. This is, again, that inspiration to pick your topic. So you can pick a topic of like sucralose and you want to find out why. And that doesn't have to be your topic, but if you want to go with it, Deanna, you can. But this is, you can pick a type of berry. You can pick a fruit. So the ORAC, it tells me, it's good because I always forget. The O I know is oxygen radical absorbance capacity. So these are the ones that absorb all those free radicals. And they apparently made a scale up and they give them all numbers. And so these are the goji berries, which actually come from the Himalayas, I'm pretty sure. But they're in Chinese herbs. And then it's all these berries and prunes. Oh yeah, there's a reason old people eat prunes, probably where you work. It will make you poop, like, so don't really only have like 2. And yeah, pomegranates, great topic. Anyway, or you can pick your favorite vegetable, or you can pick one of the evils because you're like, my family eats sucralose and I really want to understand why we shouldn't be eating sucralose. So it's just their ability to absorb all that stuff. Apples, I had somebody do apples and it was actually, I was kind of like, okay, but the amount of information she could find, and you're also going to find 2 research things on it. And usually it's in my chemistry class, so they have to be very sciencey with it, but this isn't a chemistry class. So it could be like a psychological or like more, so you get more freedom with this one than you do like in the Chem 106. So enjoy that freedom. Anyway, this slide you'll see multiple times because we're going to do spices at the end. So spices are going to be our last one because they are amazing. Like these guys are way down here. The best one of the berries is down here. These are your spices. And by the way, chocolate shows up 3 times up here. Just want to say that. Chocolate is a food. So somebody wants to do chocolate. You do need to tell me because I don't want like 5 people doing chocolate and then you're like sitting there going, oh man, you're doing my whole talk. So anyway, cook with spices. If the oil doesn't add flavor, the oil, yeah, just use spices. And I didn't know you could cook with spices without oil, but you can. And it actually comes out really amazing and flavorful. So there's tons of these slides online that show this whole thing of omega-3 versus 6s. And it didn't used to be there 20 years ago. It wasn't an issue. Again, I went to talks from naturopaths and it was all about how you need this beautiful balance. And I had a student who said, why are you putting sesame seeds? Like I put seeds on my salad. And so that's the thing you're going to do this week is you're going to add seeds. You're supposed to do nuts last week. So this week, so if you didn't do the nuts last week, then you're doing nuts and seeds this week. And she's like, but why are you doing seeds if we're not supposed to? And I'm like, well, I'm doing the whole seed so it's not oxidized. And then I was like, I looked at her because I really had to think because I'd never been asked the question. And I said, well, I'm not eating all the processed food, so I'm not getting this overabundance of the omega-6s. And I do need the omega-6s, which I'm getting in seeds. So you could pick a specific seed, which I go through because we're going to get into the good news. So I did all the bad news first. Just wait. Wednesday, we're going to do cholesterol, so it'll be fun. Yeah. This is fascinating. So the low cost of corn, if you watch, she watched King Corn, the mountains, there's huge mountains of corn in Iowa because we pay them to grow it, but then what are we going to do with it? And so the cost of corn is so low. And like this one's saying the ratio is 16:1. And I've never seen where they said 1:1, but who knows? And just more. So the omega-6s are going to create inflammation because they also then get changed they're getting changed into the first group and the second group of prostaglandins. And then the omega-3s that we're going to walk through. I have an issue with this because they're saying oil, oil, oil. We're going to do it with whole food. So the fishes are on there. That should be coming up. So omega-3s, finally, the good news. So those are your sources of omega-3. This is like a beautiful slide. I wish I could say I made it. So cold water salmon. Atlantic salmon is completely farmed salmon now. It no longer has omega-3s. It actually is not a healthy fish. It has to be the Alaska fish. So halibut and salmon, Pacific salmon, that is sourced from a good source, of course. We'll talk about mercury in a moment. Holy mackerel, that's how I remember it. Holy mackerel and then sardines. Those I think are the four big. I have it on the next slide. Actually, all your beans, but I don't know why I need beans and kidney beans. Leafy greens. So making a salad, not with iceberg, but different types. I'm really into arugula. I don't know why. There's something about the taste of it. And then adding a handful of nuts. So whether it's walnuts or almonds, whatever your favorite nuts are, and I'll talk about flax in a moment. But anyway, and you're getting rid of these, even olive oil. For a week, you can do it. For some of you, it's right. So if you didn't get rid of them last week, get rid of them this week. If you didn't do it last week, you're not going to do oils this week, and then get rid of something that's in your life that's processed that has all those added oils, which is any kind of those granola bars or cookies. Could be something as simple, and make your own. All right, so it'll be fun. Background is nuts because they are amazing. Now, obviously, if you have a nut allergy, you don't undo the nuts. I have allergies too. You could pick a nut. So cashews, by the way, are not actually a nut. I meant to do that with a slide I forgot to do, but we have plenty of slides. They actually, it's like some weird big thing, like not a melon, but it grows on the tree, and the cashew is just a little piece at the bottom. But anyway, so the reason I said, you said, why do you soak it in hot water? That's because you can soak it overnight in cold water, but I always forget. And so I have like a half hour. And so it just helps to soften them. Yeah. Anyway, so omega-3s are going to make the third group of prostaglandins. And so they're essential because the first double bond would be, I think Bram picture, maybe not. Anyway, the first double bond is 3 from the end, and we do not have a capacity to put double bonds at 3 or at 6. And so that's why these become essential. And the omega-3s are much less frequent. This guy actually had, so it gets changed. So it's called alpha linolenic acid. I don't know why it has the alpha there. It's just stuck. It's not the same thing as ALA. ALA is alpha lipoic acid, which is a modified fatty acid that's a huge antioxidant in our body. It has sulfurs on it. Anyway, it gets changed into EPA and DHA, which are the 2 fish oils. And so those have even more double bonds. And so the cold water fish are really high in EPA and DHA. The highest source of DHA is actually mother's milk. And so that tells you what it's used for, which is brain. Your brain needs these. There's actually, I couldn't find the talk. I was going to put it as an option for this week. I have to write a test for my other class. I have like at 5 o'clock today, and I haven't even thought about it, but because I was too busy making bunny bread. I ate the tail. It was like eating the solid bunny, like what part of the bunny you're gonna eat. But he's like really dense. He didn't rise right. All right. Anyway, so DHA, that's the name of it, is that almost everybody is deficient in that now, which I guess it's big in our cell membranes and what it does for our brain and stuff. And then those get changed into this prostaglandin and different sources. So flax is probably the best source. I have slides on flax. I put flax on everything. I make flax eggs. It has to be ground up though. We don't have the capacity to break the shell of the flax. And so you either have to use a coffee grinder that has never had coffee in it because coffee interferes with the omega-3s. But now Bob's Red Mill, you just go, every store has it and it's in that sealed bag. Once you open it, you got to keep it refrigerated. But that's like been a saving grace in like the past 5 years. You used to not be able to find flax meal very easily. And it's really, here it's really cheap because we're right by Bob's Red Mill. And so when I go to my mom's, they'll have Bob's Red Mill in New Jersey and everything's like twice the price because they had to pay for it. And they think it's like this hot item. We're really spoiled here. Anyway, so flax, and you just sprinkle it on stuff. So go buy a bag of flax or chia. Any of these would be awesome topics. Soy has to be the whole soy. Hemp, pumpkin seeds, that's the pumpkin seeds. Whole pumpkin's a whole nother thing. So I should have made that green, and walnuts, and also your dark leafy greens. Yeah, the best source is mom's milk, and actually walnuts are really high. So there was a study and they all had high cholesterol, but it was a small study. But half the people, they were like above 300 cholesterol. And this is 20, 30 years ago. And they had them just eat a handful of walnuts every day. That's the only difference. And the other group ate like a handful of peanuts or something different. And the group with the walnuts, their cholesterol dropped like 100 points. And then they flipped the groups like after 2 months and the exact same thing happened. So when they stopped doing the walnuts, I think it went back up anyway. And it's a handful because these guys are really high in fat. So we don't want to be eating tons of it. You do want to keep your nuts, if you buy like a bulk, you want to keep them then refrigerated. Or if you buy a bag, once you open it, because they do have the essentials. In the good old days, like when I was a kid, you could not buy them already shelled. I think the one documentary you can watch, they're all like 30 minutes. So that's why you get to watch 2 for last week, is about on the nuts. They're all actually really fun. So this was actually a study I read. I have this book that like every naturopath seems to have in their office. I have to see if he ever came out. I don't know what happened to this guy, but now I can't think of the name. I can see the whole book, but he talks about this in there. It's a nutrition book, but it's like beyond alternative medicine. And he's Chinese. He looks at also from the Chinese perspective. But they went into this place in Africa where they had serious malnutrition and learning disabilities, and they seeded the ponds with fish again and blue-green algae, and which is high in omega-3s and all these nutrients. Anyway, and most of us don't get enough because we eat processed food. And so these guys are the ones that regulate. So remember at the beginning, it was mediation. So these guys, they actually keep the other 2 in balance. And so that's why not having enough. So we're getting way too many of the other ones that are contracting your smooth muscles when you're injured. And then these guys come in and say, okay, now it's time to relax. But we're not getting enough. And so flax, yeah, if you have uterine cramping, you have to give up cow's milk. And in the month, your next cycle, you won't have the cramping. It's cow's milk is the biggest culprit, but usually it's also that you're not getting flax. And it's really just as simple as a tablespoon that you're sprinkling on stuff. It also helps to regulate your stomach mucus, inflammation, all the skin issues, all the autoimmune is with these. And it also, so if you think about cold water fish, they don't want to have their, they have a lot of double bonds because otherwise they would solidify in the water. So they have to have everything that has to be super fluidy. But it protects against, you can take a pill for this to protect against blood clotting. But this does it in just the right amount. So your body will clot when you need a blood clot to form, like you have an injury, and then it heals up. So it's probably part of the whole healing. So that you don't have, you know, people have the scar forever and forever. So it's like antifreeze for our blood. And this is a picture of, so the red is mercury and the blue is the omega-3s. So anchovies, did I say that right? So anchovies like have very little mercury. There is still mercury in there, and they're just loaded. I used to love anchovies. I can't do them now, but and then this should say Pacific salmon. I think I said sardines, which also do, but anchovies and sardines and salmon are really high. And there's the holy mackerel. And I think this has to be like our trout, which I don't know why there's a difference between trout and salmon. But, so the ones that are really high in mercury that you have to avoid, shark once in my life was amazing, but these guys are the ones that are feeding on all the other fish, so the mercury is going to accumulate in them. And so we're top feeders too. So sharks, swordfish, and marlin, and a lot of the tuna. Tilapia is really low. Tilapia is what I had a couple of students who were from the Philippines, and so the rice fields are planted where there has to be water all around to keep the rice wet, and they'll have tilapia in there, and so they're a source of fish. But I thought that was interesting because tilapia is really cheap, and that's part of the reason why is it's always in the rice fields. So with that, I have read enough stuff though that you really can't eat a lot of fish because there's too much mercury. Even these low numbers, mercury binds to your brain and you become crazy. Your sleep is disturbed, things like that. So cilantro is something that helps. So whenever you make fish, you make it with cilantro. So if you think in the Mexican, you guys, when you make the no, what's the one? Yeah, that it's always everything has cilantro in it. And I know some people can't handle cilantro. The other one is it's one type of nut, Brazil nuts. Apparently are really high in vitamin E, and they help to protect the blood-brain barrier. But you can take too many of them, so you're not supposed to have more than 5 a day. I don't know who came up with this. 5 a day, but it's the same with all the nuts that too much of something. They're really high in selenium. That's what it is Brazil nuts. And so the selenium and vitamin E help to protect the blood-brain barrier. Yeah, anyway, there you go. And there was one, it's oysters. Like there's really no omega-3s in a lot of these. Lobster, the shellfishes, like shark, there's no omega-3s. I don't even know. The one must be like a gratitude one. So does anybody know what that is? It's actually krill. And that's actually the big fad. So a lot of people take fish oils, and I had heard about this a couple of years ago, and I've never done the krill oil, but this just talks about it. It's actually really high in the omega-3s so both of them are. So the yellow ones are the fish oil pills a lot of people take. And so they're supposed to help with cholesterol, arthritis, skin issues and stuff. The thing they talked about with the krill is it's really high in that compound, which I had never heard of, which is a carotenoid, it says, which is a good antioxidant. It's higher in all the antioxidants. So from vitamin A, C, E, and this other one. And it's supposed to have much lower levels of mercury, which is something they never really talk about with the fish oils, but you are getting, they will have small amounts of mercury, but apparently krill doesn't have as much mercury. There's also, this is the thing that I had heard, and I can't remember, it was many years ago. Apparently our body absorbs that oil, the DHA and EPA from the krill better. I don't know why, I'm not sure if they know why. And it's considered more sustainable. So krill is what the, those things are really tiny. I guess it's showing it next to the pill, but those pills are even smaller than the fish pills, right? This is what the whales eat. So in the whales, they just go through a whole thing of it, and that's what they're eating. And whales are really smart. Anyway, and that's just another one that talks about them. So you could see a topic on salmon. There's like some really cool stuff. All right. Oh yeah, this talks about the toxicity that the salmon also, besides that mercury, which we all talk about, anything that's going to be fatty is going to have other things accumulated with it. So my Chinese medical doctor, Dr. Lee, is just like, you can't eat fish. Just absolutely can't. Dr. Greger, the How Not to Die, How Not to Diet, he's like, fish is just evil. We've just, it was the gift from God to us. Fish was meant to feed our brain. And then we've just destroyed our waterways with lots of things besides just mercury. And so there's a lot of people who are just like, there's no safe fish. None of those people live in the Pacific Northwest. And so it's really hard to live in the Pacific Northwest and have neighbors who bring you fresh salmon, because right now it must be that everybody's going out boating and stuff. So chia, right? This is a wonderful topic. And so this could be your seeds. And this is, I don't want to say fad, but you put it in water and it soaks it up. I'm not a fan. Chia, it's a texture thing, but they also make those beautiful pets that you can make. And so they're really high in omega-3s and fiber. They actually have a really nice balance of omega-3s and omega-6s. And since it's not processed, because you're buying it as a seed, again, you're not buying flax oil, it's going to be highly oxidized. Even if you're buying it at astronomical prices at Whole Foods or something, you cannot get safe oil of an omega-3. This is the thing that is really cool. So the Aztec warriors used to carry these little pouches of chia seeds, and that's all they would take into battle. And that's all they would eat, or chia seeds, like 1 or 2 days. That little pouch would give them the energy they need, because fats have a lot of energy. And so that's like Yoda going into battle. And so decreases inflammation, blood pressure, cholesterol are all the things it's promoted for. You can even do a chia pet for us to see. This word, we're going to see this a lot because we're going to do cholesterol next. Dyslipidemia. So dis means bad, lipids. It means your lipids are out of balance. So there are good fats and bad fats. And it actually helps to regulate your insulin issues and diabetes. So it's really good. And so there's a thing where you do a spoonful every morning with lemon water. And I have a friend whose son just had a birthday. He had a hedgehog, not a chia hedgehog, like real hedgehog. Like adorable, $500. But I know he saved his money. But they're prickly. I didn't know that, because I was like, can I come see it? And they're like, well, it's prickly. I'm like, really? Why would you get a prickly animal? I mean, it's adorable, but it's still all right. And that's just, oh yeah, it swells up 12 times its size. You can make a healthy recipe with a flax egg. So if you've never, I think I wrote a note to like 2 or 3 of you so do the same recipe you did, but try it with a flax egg instead. So I must have it on, I think I wrote it in the handout that's on Blackboard, but it's 1 tablespoon of flax or chia. I prefer flax. It has to be the flax mill, not the seed, to 2 tablespoons of water. Some places say 3. I feel it's then really watery, so I always do 2. I have a shot glass that's specifically for my flax egg, so I know exactly how much flax. Anyway, I've had a number of people who've switched, and I would never go back. So you usually can't just cut the egg out, so you just make a flax egg. Hemp seeds. Nobody's actually ever done this as a topic, and I thought this was an interesting picture because I've never seen them black. I've always seen white ones, but there's so many different types of hemp. And it's also has omega-3 and omega-6s, but more omega-3s, and it's really good source of protein, magnesium, zinc, which helps fight. So, all right. And then flax. So again, you can't eat this flax. It's going to go right through you. Our body can't break down the shell. Your teeth can't break it down. But you can now find the mill so easily, and it regulates everything. It's so that's the good news. The bad news is it oxidizes, so you don't ever want to do the oil. So I sprinkle it on after or baking, because baking doesn't go to super high temperatures actually, but it helps to regulate your other lipids, improving your cell membranes. It helps to regulate insulin. It's pretty much everything. And again, this is really high in mother's milk. There's some nutritionists out there who recommend the DHA EPA oil or the fish, because they say if you're getting it in the flax, your body has to go through 2 steps to get to the prostaglandin, and some people are compromised. And so anyway, but for babies, their brain, 50% of your brain growth is in your fetus, and the other 50% is in the first 1 to 2 years of life. And so that's why it's so important to breastfeed. And they add it to formula that's going to be oxidized because you can't add this to things. But memory and learning ability. And so I said a tablespoon because I was being conservative, because what they recommend is actually 4 tablespoons a day of the flax meal, which is a lot. And it's really high in fiber. If I tell you to use 4 tablespoons, you're going to come back on Wednesday and say, so remember when you gave that warning, you have to be a little bit stronger, the warning. It's going to clean you out. And so anyway, start with the tablespoon. Put it on your salads. Put it on everything. Every time you eat, then go up to 2 tablespoons or baking with it. Anyway, put it in your smoothies. So you can put hemp, you can get, the problem when you get the mixes of chia, hemp, and flax, I don't know if you guys have seen this, the flax is never ground up. And so you're not really getting the flax, but it will just pass through you. It helps your moods. I had a student, and it also helps skin, every kind of skin issue. Her son had severe ADHD. This is 25 years ago. And she was actually a lactation consultant. But her son had this thing, and it was probably because of the medication he was on, where his skin tinted. And so that's where if you pinch your skin goes back. It's elastic. All of our skin is, but you would pinch his skin here and it would just stay pinched. He had no elasticity to his skin. Within 1 week of them doing flax, his skin was perfectly normal. Like all these other skin stuff he had going on. She came back to class the next week and I'm like, okay, thank you for that lecture. Anyway, cancer, it also balances your blood, your red blood cell membrane. See, it's just a small amount. Again, you can't do the oil. And it makes your red blood cells actually bind oxygen even better. All right, this slide says that there should be 1 through 5 next, and I don't know what happened to that slide. I've been in search of it for like 3 years. So those are walnuts. You can do walnuts because I tell you what, if you want to have a fun slideshow, there are so many fun things you can make with walnut faces. So when I was pregnant with Joey, my doctor's Chinese medicine told me I had to eat walnuts every day, a handful of walnuts, because walnuts look like a brain. Now it's all over online about that, but they look like a brain, and so that would help. And they're really high in DHA, which is needed for brain development. So Chinese knew it without having to know the why. And so that's why you'll find all these really cool images. And that was just like my new favorite cartoon. And then my sister sent an Easter egg one yesterday. So I'm with broccoli and I'm with a tree, and I'm going to do a talk on mushrooms. So this was also for me to inspire you to pick a topic. You could do broccoli. You could be like, you know what? I found a whole bunch of articles way back that first week when she had us do that crazy broccoli thing. You could do mushrooms. This is like this is amazing with mushrooms. You can pick a specific type of mushroom. In fact, if you tell me you want to do mushrooms, I might say to pick a specific type in case somebody else, we could all do a different type of mushrooms and do talks on it. I'm not saying almonds are amazing. So I'll put a warning out there with almonds. So I can eat them again now, but I had, after you go through like some kind of illness and stuff, your body has to get back to the balance. And so I had issues where if I ate a handful of walnuts, I would look like I was 6 months pregnant within a half hour. And so they're really high in phytates or phytates. You hear the names pronounced different ways. And so when they dry roast, so I only do raw nuts. When they dry roast because of the temperature, they don't go to really high temperatures. That gets rid of a lot of that. And so historically, they only ate nuts after they'd been roasted. So you did the almonds. And so it was something, she looked at a can of almonds and it's like, why do they have to add oil to the coating to give it some flavor and stuff? And so it is that you want to buy raw almonds, raw, everything. I think pistachios is the only one. There's one of them you can't find raw because I think you can't crack the shell is the problem. Anyway, almonds would be a really fun topic too. And so this is just, right, when I'm saying eating nuts, it's supposed to be 5 almonds and stuff, but a handful. So putting them on your salad. So last week, what you were supposed to do is nuts. Some of you hopefully have done that or turning in today. And this week it's seeds. So you can just do both, throw it in your smoothie, throw it on your salad, and that will take care of it. And then you're giving up, again, something that has these processed oils, which could just be a continuation. This is just a thing, again, there's tons of nuts. I don't know anything about pecans other than I absolutely love them, and they're an every other year crop. I went to a wedding and got to sit next to the pecan princess. Her family owns the biggest pecan farm, and so I learned everything about pecans. It was really like one of those fascinating weddings where you have no idea who you're going to be sitting next to. And so anyway, so apparently there is a national, I don't know when nut day is. And then that was at the end of last week's thing. But there's a thing called baruca nuts, which is, I guess, a type of almonds. And anyway. All right, so antagonist. So an antagonist would be something that is blocking your body's ability to use the PGE3s, because the 3s are the ones that smooth everything out to help you. So when you injure yourself, you want the inflammation, but then you want it to go back to normal. And these guys are the ones that get it. So we want to have the omega-3s. And so the big 3, caffeine, alcohol, and tobacco. So with that also, you can pick a drink. You could do green tea as your topic. You could do coffee, which is amazing. Alcohol and tobacco all block it. So caffeine, it doesn't mean you can't have coffee. It means you have coffee in the morning. And you have your flax for your lunch and dinner. If you're having coffee as just coffee, you can even be doing the intermittent fasting, because coffee is amazing. It's what we've done to coffee that's not so amazing. So insulin, we give everybody insulin. We think insulin cures all, and it does not. It actually messes this up. So my friend who's been on insulin ever since about 2 weeks after starting the insulin, he's had every possible thing that can go wrong. But we'll get there. Trans fat, saturated, getting older in an unhealthy way, radiation toxins, and then getting too much of the omega-6s and the arachidonic acid, the other ones. So too much processed food, too much animal food can actually block these, which is interesting. Vitamin deficiencies. It's probably not just C. And again, this is from a talk I saw in stress. And we'll talk about stress and cortisol. Sorry, I'm just thinking of what I should have had us do. Maybe, I don't know. As a choice. We'll do that next week. So green tea, basil and skullcap are herbs, so you have to save those for the last talk. Different vitamins. Agonist means they help it. And so I don't think it's limited to just these. I also want to remind you that when you give your talk up here, what it looks like on your computer and on the screen will often be different. So just go with it. We'll all be apologizing for the color schemes that just keep getting changed. So a deficiency is pretty much everything we all suffer from. I mean, if it's that you went to bed at 2 in the morning, you didn't sleep, but everybody deals with these issues. Could it just be so simple as eating that handful of almonds or walnuts are the best types of nuts for the omega-3s, or any of those seeds? And these are all the things. So all the skin, all the hair issues, everything, pretty much everything you can list, all the things dealing with brain, hyperactivity, focus. That's why I just wrote, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know, this is just because you can find so much of this now online, like everyone talks about it, except right now it's the omega-6 thing that seems to be a hot topic. This is the thing that fascinated me. Where are the levels low? It's in all the places, right? Brazil, the US and Canada, the places. I'm not sure why India is showing up on there. And a lot of places just don't have enough information for them to know, but the third world countries don't have issues because they're still eating close to it. So this slide actually kind of, I don't agree 100% with it. So you guys are going to be eating on that side still. So we're eating seeds, and that's and you're cutting out more of the crap. So if you're still doing fast food, Chick-fil-A, don't do it. If you haven't given up fast food, give it up for a week. Your body will be grateful. This is there for Maddie. That so that's my little puppy. She never grew. She's still that size. But anyway, dog food. When we started like making processed dog foods, our pets started living like much shorter lives. And there's a lot of additives to animal food that should be in there. That's in Rocky. And then just more omega-3s get changed into your fish oils and help to keep the inflammation in balance. And again, we need the response, but the problem is we're getting way too much of this food and not enough of this food. And so you always have a choice. So yeah, is give up the pizza for a week because pizzas are gonna have the oil. You can find something to do that is healthier. I think the recipe I put at the end of, I have to open it when I get home, is actually a tahini miso sauce that I make. So instead of last week it was, and so tahini is sesame seeds. I can talk about those. And then miso. So miso is a salty source, but apparently doesn't cause the blood pressure issues. So instead of soy sauce, and anyway, this is a picture like a watermelon does degrade, and this is a picture of the Happy Meal. And this is make a smoothie with your stuff in it, like your greens, a handful. It should be equal amount of greens to your fruits. This was these packets you can find at the store that are sold right next to the fruits and vegetables. There's absolutely no fruit in it. It's sugar and corn syrup. And so they advertise it, it's a fresh success smoothie, and it's pure sugar, processed sugar. So yeah, eat your nuts and seeds. So I can stop recording.